All right. I think we should go ahead and get started since we have such a great presentation. What do you think, Janelle?
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to Maddie's Fun's Community Conversations. We are so glad you can be with us today, and I'm back with Janel Griffieth, who is our co-host for the month, and I'm Sheila Kukan, who's your host for the year. Janel is a nonprofit leader with over a decade of experience in community engagement, organizational development, and animal welfare. With a background in public health from the University of Southern Florida, she began her advocacy in domestic violence prevention and has continued to champion survivors and their pets. Since 2015, Janel has advanced life-saving animal welfare initiatives from launching neonatal programs to strengthening volunteer and community engagement. She also has contributed to national organizations driving diversity, equity, and inclusion across the sector. And additionally, she's an incredible pet parent and foster mom, having fostered over 250 animals. Janel, thank you so much for joining me again this month as a Community Conversations host.
Sheila, thank you so much. I also feel like we should do your intro.
Oh,
We just do mine. But thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate hosting this. So I'm actually going to kick off our call with our question of the day, which is, what does meeting someone where they are mean to you? So this could be in work, your community, or your personal life. Go ahead and drop that in the chat.
I love that question. What does it mean to you, Janelle?
Honestly, it's kind of a simple understanding for me is just how do you describe meeting people where they're at? I mean, I think in any kind of context, it's understanding maybe someone's background and being able to have that conversation and then going from there. And I think like for example, in a work example, when I would teach people how to bottle feed kittens, right? If they're coming in and they've never bottle fed a kitten a day in their life, we're starting from the basics. And so it's very much just having that beginner conversation, but also understanding if they came in kind of advanced, then we're adjusting, right? We're going to start off more advanced in the conversation. So I think kind of something like that to me. What about you?
I love that. I think that definitely relates to what I'm thinking. And I also see some stuff in the chat about not being judgmental. And I think that's part of it as well. Just acknowledging that people are whole human beings with their own stories. And I don't always know the full story, but I don't have to. I can just kind of meet them where they are in that moment and start from the basics, like you said. And I think we can read there's some really great stuff in here in the chat.
Yeah, I like the listening non-judgmentally to address problems. Thanks, Deborah.
Oh, I see Amber said, understanding their needs and emotions, even if you don't agree with them. I think that is definitely something that I'm trying to tap into lately.
Ooh, Patty, taking the time to slow down and have the conversation. Slowing down is really hard now in
Mm,
an instant gratification world.
yes, listening first. These are great. Everyone, keep it coming. I love these responses, and thank you for being so thoughtful in your responses as well. As you are responding in the chat, please, if anyone has any national updates, go ahead and add those in the chat as well. And you are also welcome to share any national updates on our thread on Maddie's Pet Forum, which Allison dropped in the chat. Thank you, Allison.
Okay, I think we're ready. I'm going to introduce our speaker of the day. Today we are joined by Jenna Topper, Homeless Outreach and Assistance Program, HOAP, coordinator for the City of Sacramento Front Street Animal Shelter. Jenna leads the Homeless Outreach and Assistance Program, HOAP, at Front Street Animal Shelter, where she focuses on supporting people experiencing homelessness, their pets, and their pets through their field-based, relationship-centered outreach. With over a decade of experience in community engagement, Jenna has built trust-driven partnerships across housing, health, and social service sectors to expand access to veterinary care and preserve the human-animal bond. Under her leadership, HOPE has provided care for more than 3,750 pets. Good job, Jenna. In Sacramento's encampments, while piloting innovative approaches to disease prevention, shelter diversion, and community health. Jenna is especially committed to valuing and practicing trauma-informed care and sheltering and outreach work, recognizing it is an ongoing process of reflection, growth, and courageousness and compassion, and that it is. Thank you, Jenna, so much for being here, and go ahead and take it away.
All right, thank you all for having me here. This is by far the largest audience I've spoke to about this, and I'm seeing everybody coming in from all over the place, and it's just really inspiring me to be able to offer the input that I have to the animal care world, and seeing that so many people are in value alignment all across the nation, doing incredible work. So it always leaves me inspired to be in these spaces, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Without further ado, getting into it, trauma-informed care is, you could do, take whole courses on it, and we've got 30 minutes. So we're going to blast our way through it. And what I'm going to really focus on is just give you a quick snapshot into who our homeless outreach program is, what we are, what we're about, what it looks like to put trauma-informed care in practice in our program, what trauma-informed care is, what trauma is, and the benefits and the takeaways we've seen by trying to implement it within our outreach work. So without further ado, I'm going to get into it. But before we roll right in, that value of slowing down. I've given presentations in this manner a few times, and you'll be surprised how much talking about trauma might provoke something in you. We are all experiencing trauma on a regular basis, especially in the animal shelter care world. And often we're coping, but not always healing and letting ourselves deal with that. So I just want to acknowledge that I'm going to roll through these things kind of fast. It's not to discredit their value or the worth that each topic has, and the deep dive that you can go into in any one respective slide, if you will. But I also want to take time to acknowledge that this might bring up emotions in us all. This is hard work and it is heart work. So if you need to take a time to just step away, please feel free to do so. And please offer yourself that grace to know that those emotions might come up. So here's a little helping hand from my personal pup there to give you that moment of kindness when you need it throughout our presentation. So HOAP at a glance. HOAP stands for Homeless Outreach and Assistance Program, and our purpose is ultimately supporting pet owners experiencing homelessness through field-based, relationship-centered outreach that works to deliver equitable access to veterinary care, supporting with disease prevention and population management both in and outside of our shelter walls, preserving that human-animal bond that we all care about so much in a way that is also promoting community health in our city. We work by responding to calls via our city dispatch system. So the same way you get a hold of knowing where to dig, that's how you can get a hold of us. It makes it a little bit simple, and it allows us to help us meet owners wherever they may be at, under the bridges, on the levees, wherever they may be. We value a relationship-centered, trauma-informed care approach, and we work in partnership, not just with partners like nonprofit organizations, but also with owners themselves to reduce those systemic barriers to folks trying to access housing or supportive services alongside their pet, and using what expertise we have to help mitigate those barriers. Our desired impact, first and foremost, is that we have that authentic trust and rapport with the community members. We recognize that that is earned, not given, and that it takes a level of authenticity to keep. By having that trust, we hope that it keeps pets with their people and avoids preventable shelter intakes, especially as I might not have mentioned it, but we are a municipal shelter. So at the bottom line, if the access to care isn't there, we are going to be the ones that are receiving that pet. So by keeping people with their pets and kind of front loading a proactive approach, we're able to provide that care in a way that is less traumatic for everyone involved, including our shelter. Through this work, it supports public health outcomes, like I said, supporting disease prevention, minimizing the parvo cases on our streets, supporting with population management, getting reproductive care out into the community, and it's strengthening our shelter and community responsiveness, and hopefully creating a sustainable model that other organizations can look to for how to support both people and their pets as a municipal shelter. We work alongside our animal control officer team, our field services team, but we are comprised of a small group of committed folks. Our HOAP veterinarian, Dr. Smalley, in the middle left there, myself as the full-time HOAP program coordinator, two registered vet techs, our RVT Marco and our RVT Desiree in the middle, two animal control officers. Due to some recent staffing shortages and promotions, we currently don't have those two roles allocated to our program at this time, but we hope that that comes back to us soon as we hire more staff. And then definitely last but surely not least, our HOAP resource volunteer, Shannon. She dedicates our time coming in every single week to go through all the resources that we get donated from our community and get those all organized to be disseminated into those that need it most. And we appreciate her tenfold. We love Shannon. So I think before we get into the trauma-informed care and how it works in our program, it's important to know that a lot of this work starts with building a strong foundation. We consider our HOPE program a new program. We were one of the first municipalities to be investing in this manner, being intentional with that field outreach approach. And it started with a listening tour and mapping out the people services and the people services ecosystem and figuring out how we were going to play into that and lean on the strengths that were already existing and what that need actually was. And so what role should we play as a municipal shelter in this intersection between people and pet? And what privilege and power are we awarded within our role? And what privilege and power are we awarded with our affiliation with the organization that we're working with, in this case, the City of Sacramento? And how can we use that to advocate for folks that may not be at the table that are more directly impacted by the decisions happening? We also we set early on values, and that's what we have fallen back on. And it requires a consistent value lens. You put on the glasses and everything you see needs to be filtered through it. And so ensuring that all the services that we're intending to offer align with our values of intentionality, equity, transparency, and access, and being able to fall back on that as we figure out how to explore and grow and move forward. So some other guiding questions that continue to guide us to this day: who is currently being excluded from accessing care and why? How are we creating programs that truly reach maybe the folks that are hardest to get to? How do we reduce harm and build trust with pet guardians who may fear enforcement? What barriers keep pets from staying with their people, and which ones do we have influence over? How can we honor owners' advocacy and the strengths and connections already embedded within their communities? I think a huge answer to this particular question is trauma-informed care, which we're going to dive into deeper. And what values are most important to us? What do those look like in practice, especially as we navigate obstacles? I think it's really important that we have clarity and can verbally state, like, my values are blah, 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 and that as a consensus, we all are on the same page. It is easy to be value-oriented and to look forward to evolve a program when things are good. It's much harder in times of high conflict or stress or burnout. And those are when the values are actually most important, is navigating some of the harder times, not just how we want to moving forward. So, embodying a new practice into your work and thinking about taking on new trainings and doing more work and building out a homeless outreach program probably sounds like a whole lot. And so I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that so many of us on the national level are in a very similar boat with our capacity challenges. This picture here, all those little icons account for our 10,000 intakes that we get here at Front Street Animal Shelter and the small team that's charged with taking care of them. We are well over our heads, as most of us are. And while you may not have the capacity at this time to build out a homeless outreach and assistance program with a veterinarian, you can start with trauma-informed care staff. And that is actually a huge way to build bridges in the community that directly impact positive outcomes for people and their pets. And so this is just a moment to kind of acknowledge the reality that we're in and let us still sit with the inspiration to still do something and still work to provide that cultural shift in animal care on a larger scale. So, what is trauma? This definition is adapted from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, also known as SAMHSA. Trauma results from an event, series of events, or set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on their functioning and well-being. Ultimately, it's not only about what happened, it's about how it was experienced. The same exact event can happen to a variety of people, and they could have all experienced it very differently. Trauma-informed care is moving towards not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you and how can I support you in it. There's a large amount, there's a variety of trauma, and this is where like you could spend a whole class just on this one slide. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but some of the types of trauma that we're experiencing, and definitely that those experiencing homelessness are experiencing, is acute trauma, a single overwhelming event. For example, getting evicted. Chronic, repeated, and prolonged exposure. A lot of our people experiencing homelessness are experiencing chronic trauma. Let's say repeat sweeps, keep kicking them from one side of the curb to the next. Complex exposure to multiple types of trauma, thinking how intersectionality in one's identity may play in and how different systems of oppression all layer on top of each other. Generational trauma passed down by families over time, and vicarious trauma, which is actually repetitive secondary trauma, which is a lot of what our shelter employees are facing, where you may not be directly impacted by the trauma, but you're indirectly experiencing it, and it still has that physical and mental impact on you. So what is trauma-informed care? Trauma-informed care is an approach that recognizes the widespread impact of trauma in our society and responds by creating environments and relationships that promote all the good things that are going to support that individual reaching a state of more regulation or stability, or a more positive outcome. When someone is in a high trauma state or a high stress state, quite literally a part of their brain shifts into a survival mode and a part of their brain goes offline while others take over. This is a lot of the sciencey stuff. So really what it is that brainstem and that limbic system, they're on full blast. It's responsible for emotions and detecting danger, as well as just that brainstem, that basic fight, flight, or fight response. And that prefrontal cortex, responsible for cognitive function and thinking and rational thought, turns off, and those other two are just on full blast. And this might cause someone to react in a way that seems unprofessional, unwarranted, out of nowhere, whatever the circumstance may be. But what it is really trauma in the brain and the body trying to survive in that survival state. So why trauma-informed care matters? People experiencing homelessness are facing pretty much every aspect of trauma listed. They have extremely high trauma exposure, and their basic hierarchy of needs aren't met. So we're talking about trying to engage with people that aren't able to get food or take a good night's sleep or have the basic means of just what it means to survive as a human. And if someone is in survival mode, it's going to be feelings of safety that are going to support that access to more rational thought and problem solving and allow us to work with them to support the pet's ultimate outcome. Trauma-informed care in this circumstance is really the only way to build trust. It requires a level of authenticity and compassion, and it really ultimately improves outcomes for both people and their pets. And by getting that trust in the field, we can offer in the field care before problems escalate. Again, supporting our shelter. We're already investing the resources as a municipal shelter either way, but front loading it and doing it in a way that's much more proactive really largely minimizes the impact that emergency cases have coming in. It also sustains our staff, and it reframes the shelter's role in the community. It provides a framework, like people said, for slowing down, regulating, staying compassionate and goal-oriented in the times of challenging circumstances or conversations. So what it looks like in practice, our approach, access to care means access to be the best pet parent they can be with the resources they have. It does not mean prescribing our idea of pet parenthood onto others. With that being said, spay neuter is not a requirement for owned animal care. There are certain emergency situations where that may be a requirement, especially if the animal was brought in an emergency that could have been prevented by spay neuter. With our owned animal care program, though, let's say you just have an ear issue that's not necessarily a requirement to get access to care. It can be hard to stomach that with that capacity slide that I saw, showed you a little while ago. But ultimately, we want to provide those consent-based opportunities for folks to gain the knowledge to make educated decisions on behalf of their pet and allow them to buy into that themselves. As an animal shelter, historically, we've been caring for quote unquote unowned animals. Obviously, there's always owners to some of these animals coming in, but that has required shelter staff to play the role of an animal advocate. And while we still have to play that role as a shelter staff, we also have an owner on the other side of this. And so it is requiring us to rethink the way we're doing things, rethink our policies, our documents, our program offerings, and ensure that we are creating space for that owner's advocacy to complement the work that we're doing, and be ingrained in the work we do so we can get that animal back home as fast as possible. And this is what this whole presentation is about. But these two words, I just want to emphasize: value and prioritize. We are not perfect. I am working in a municipal setting. I cannot control what everybody does. I would love for more training to get disseminated. But at the end of the day, where our organization is coming in strong is we value what trauma-informed care is. We understand its application to our program. And in times of challenging moments, we prioritize it. And trauma-informed care is not a checkbox. It's not a destination. It's a practice. So you don't have to be perfect, but you can still value and prioritize it and put it into your program's work. Part of that is building on the foundation and recognizing our participation in association with the past and ongoing harm caused by government or city affiliated entities on the unhoused population. No matter how well-intentioned we might be with their services, we have history, a historical context to be aware of, and we can hold that space and hold that truth while still building to be a better organization moving forward. So a little look about like core trauma-informed care principles, and then I'm going to work our way into how these applies particularly to our homeless outreach program. Safety, working to create a non-judgmental, calm interaction that supports the comfort of the individual. Getting them into a regulated state as best we can is going to be one of those first components. Trustworthiness and transparency. You get trustworthiness by offering transparency, often about our limited resources or limitations or what our circumstances are, and creating opportunities for dual mutual reliability, understanding what our expectations are of each other. Peer support, empowering through shared experiences and community connections, also kind of lends itself to collaboration and mutuality, working in partnership to help support the collective goal of pets' well-being, and working with owners, working with the aunties and the grandmas and all the other people that make up the strong communities that so many of these folks have. Empowerment and choice. Often folks experiencing homelessness get choice stripped from them. And so this is a really powerful way to find any and all ways that you can incorporate opportunities for choice and voices to be heard, highlight their strengths, their resiliency, and the capacity for care that they do have. Last but surely not least, cultural humility and awareness. This is where diversity, equity, and inclusion training comes in, understanding our biases, respecting identity, history, and lived experience, and recognizing power dynamics in an interaction. It really doesn't matter how trained up an animal control officer is, they're still walking up with the badge. So like that needs to be acknowledged and understood in that interaction, and we have to hold space for that while also still striving to be as trauma-informed care as we can. So how some of these pillars relate directly to our work. I'm going to get into a little bit of the weeds here. And some of these are going to overlap to multiple of those categories that you saw. But when we're out in the field, considering safety, we are in an Explorer vehicle that has the same city label that comes and sweeps folks. So we have to be aware upon our arrival that we may already, just through our presence arriving, cause some concern. And so we're making sure that our windows are down. We're like waving out the window, shouting at people, asking if people want food, and going over the top to let people know why we're there, and ensure that we're trying to support their comfort of our arrival. Space for sharing and venting. It's not rare for us to arrive at a location and perhaps someone just had a negative interaction with the code enforcement officer. They see our city label, they start going off, and we can hold that space for them to share their feelings and feel held in that way without needing to defend ourselves or argue, or, we can just hold that space and be empathetic to whatever circumstance they may be dealing with in that moment. Asking for consent. While folks may be on public property, it's still super important that we ask for consent before approaching, ask for consent before setting something down on the table, asking for consent before taking a photo or giving the dog a treat, and respecting the autonomy of their space. For those working to practice trauma-informed care, I think that this particular one is one of those unique ones that you can actually intentionally go out of your way to do. Like I might go out of my way to try to see if I can find a place for my clipboard to sit, just so I can ask them, can I set my clipboard there? And show them that I respect their space. Use of chosen names on the streets. There's a lot going on. You know, people don't always want their personal information out there. And we do have a large transgender community that we also honor. And so just being very mindful of asking people what's most comfortable in terms of how they want to be referred to, and using that where we can. That also goes into intentional introductions. We want that to be, while we have to like get through a lot of animals, we have a lot on our plate, we also don't want it to be super transactional. So we go out of our way to make sure to introduce ourselves, what our role is, and ask the same of those that we're working with to put a face to the name. And then prioritizing physical and emotional safety is going to lend itself right to choice as well. Inquiring what's going to make the owner feel more comfortable. It's little things like, let's say I'm talking to an owner and the sun is, if the sun is out, I'm going to be the one with the sun in my face, not them. Little tiny things like that, or asking if they want to talk in the shade before we get started, or asking if they would rather sit down or start with a glass of water, or just checking in on what's going to make them feel more comfortable. Same thing goes for trying to make sure to maneuver the animals around in a way that's going to keep the animals regulated as well. And a lot of that just comes with inquiring directly with the owner and checking to see what's going to make them feel safe. Inviting opportunities for choice, another one that you can like chip in there and stick in there wherever you can. It's little things like maybe starting when I'm doing paperwork, like, do you want to start with information about yourself or your pet first? And just giving a little opportunity for choice for them to buy in. And so often, you know, they want to start with their pet first, but by the time I get to them, we've already kind of bridged that discomfort, and it's a more personal interaction. And then asking for consent to share knowledge and inquire further. I think this one is particularly important for folks in animal care because we are so familiar of the crisis and all the benefits of spay-neuter, for example, in particular. We have a tendency to like spew stuff at folks. And we have seen that when asking for consent to share knowledge, that we are seeing more long-term changes of mind where people are able to buy into getting that information. So for example, maybe an 8-year-old pitty that they said that they don't want to have any more litters. I might ask, have you ever heard of a pyromitra? No. Would you like to hear more? Rather than just saying, you should spay neuter your animal because these are the benefits. And so it's just a different shift of the way that we present information. Connection, prioritizing the pet owner relationship. While we're going to be the ones to do the poking, it doesn't mean that they can't be involved. It doesn't mean they can't do a silly dance, or we can't do a huge celebration after handing the puppy back over to them. And so going out of our way to really highlight and celebrate that connection and the bond that they have with their animals. Co-regulation through mirroring. If someone's in a hard, challenging state and I see that they're kind of swaying back and forth, I might literally meet them on their level and sit down on the ground and like practice slow breathing alongside them. And they might not even notice that I'm doing it, but it's an offer to connect on a human level and get them to a more regulated state. Connecting to alternative resources. We're not the only ones doing this work. There are also people services that support the medical care on the people side of things, as well as domestic abuse and all the other outreach organizations. And so when we're out in the field, our focus is the animal. But if we see individuals have more of a need, we do go out of our way to try to connect them with partners where we can and see them for the holistic person that they are. And then probably one of our most successful aspects of our program, working with individuals in community with others, neighbors, family, case managers. We have a linkage in our system that basically, while one person can be microchipped to a dog, we can create all these other animal person links. And so that's where the aunties, the uncles, the cousins, everybody comes in. And instead of having just one person to call if the animal comes in, we have like 5 people to get a hold of the owner. And it's so much more effective. Additionally, there's been encampments where perhaps one owner has a cell phone and is kind of the leader of the leader of the encampment and helps us spay neuter like 20+ animals off one cell phone because one person had the agency and the wherewithal to help coordinate on behalf of others. Trust and transparency. As a municipal shelter, we're not necessarily obligated to provide a why, but it's still super important. And offering that ethos for why things are the way they are really helps get people on the same page and helps us work together to navigate obstacles. Consistency with individuals and responsibilities, making sure folks know what we expect of them and vice versa. And these two kind of go hand in hand, but acknowledgement of harm caused and a commitment to improve. We are overwhelmed. Our caseload is immense. We're bound to make mistakes at times. And while we don't have to hate on ourselves for it, we can still acknowledge the harm that it caused and make a commitment to improve while still offering ourselves that grace. And then allowance to show up better next time. When that frontal part of the lobe is not working, people might react in a way that seems very unwarranted. They might even get violent. And so these are circumstances where, yes, we have to tread the line of making sure we're keeping our staff safe and not tolerating abuse, but we also want to create the opportunity for that person to become more regulated and come back in a better state. An example I have for this is like I was working with an owner back to back, accidentally microchipped one guy's dog to the previous dog. He came in over the weekend. He saw that it was microchipped to a different guy, freaked out, caused a whole scene, yelled at our staff, like banged on the windows. And I got messages from the team saying, hey, like, we're not going to work with this individual anymore. This is what happened. I called him up. I saw what I did. I was like, I'm so sorry. I was doing too many things at once. I'm sure that was really jarring to see that. I really apologize. And then he ended up apologizing too. He's like, I had a lot going on that day. I totally didn't mean to act like that. I'm so sorry. He came in, he apologized, and we grew the relationship from that. Whereas, in a different circumstance, he would have just been cut off and wouldn't have been able to receive care anymore. And then verbal and written instructions. With that prefrontal cortex shutting off, it doesn't matter if you say the most perfect chef's kiss like statement. If it's not written down, it might as well have not been said. And so it's important that people have resources to fall back on when they get into a more regulated state to be able to reference that and be able to be informed on what's happening. And a kind of a component of trauma-informed care, it's not particular, but it's called motivational interviewing. I did just stick this nugget in here as well. It is a practice, a person-centered communication approach that largely supports people to explore their own motivation to make positive changes in their life. And it's something that we use constantly in this work. There's an acronym OARS, open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, summaries. And it's a really essential tool. I'm not going to be able to dive in too deep for it today because with the limited time, but I do want to just invite people to look more into this because this is definitely something that we use constantly. It starts with open-ended questions. So what is most important to you about caring for your pet right now? Let's say someone comes in a high trauma state, freaking out, they're screaming, and trying to get them to enlighten us on what they're looking for, what's most important to them right now, and letting them articulate to that can help get them a little bit more regulated. Affirmations. It looks like you've been really resourceful in trying to find a way to offer care for your pet. We can step in and offer this medication instead, or whatever that looks like. Reflections. It sounds like you're worried about being separated from your pet, though I know you're wanting to do what's best for them. My goal is to keep you together, and I'm happy to talk to you more about this until you feel reassured. And summaries. I understand you want her spayed, but she's currently pregnant and you don't want to terminate. We can support with the vaccines for the puppies. And when they're rehomed, we can support with spay for mom. Does that sound like a good plan? And just, laying things out and working in partnership with people to move forward on the goals of their pet's care. So some real challenges and honest lessons from trying to do this work. Some barriers are that capacity constraints, heavy call loads, staffing shortages, and limited training time can make it really challenging to embody trauma-informed care, as well as a long-standing culture of enforcement first responses, and that impacts a lot of our political decision-making here in City of Sacramento and on a national level, and how that might influence how people are perceiving our services or our presence. And it requires department-wide consistency in a very high-stress, high burnout setting. The benefits, though, is that it works and that it actually does support staff well-being at the end of the day when you're having those positive interactions that have positive outcomes. And so what we've learned, trauma-informed care is a practice. It's not a checkbox. You're never going to be an expert. You're always going to be a practitioner. It's a skill that's built through experience as well. You're going to have to learn. You're going to have to sit at night and say, oh, I wish I said that differently. Like, it's a part of the experience. You got to be in practice doing it in real time. Modeling matters. While we are working to embody trauma-informed care in our program, not all of us have formalized training, but you'd be surprised how much these vet techs can practice trauma-informed care despite their lack of formalized training. And it comes through a lot of modeling and witnessing it. And so even if you can get some of your staff trained, folks can learn by seeing their peers practice it. And that can be very valuable. De-escalation is super powerful and should never be understated. We all have outcomes and goals that we're striving for, but just purely the goal of de-escalation in a conversation can go so far. Even one calm, compassionate response can shift the entire dynamic and lead to better outcomes for everybody involved. And every time someone practices trauma-informed care, it ultimately chips away that stigma of how we're showing up in community and builds that trust, because we all know that the shelter crisis is community problems and it's going to take community solutions to face it. So it's important that our community sees us as a part of the solution, and that we work to build that trust. And change takes super hard conversations, a lot of vulnerability, a lot of rawness, a lot of courage to choose compassion. And it is so vital for staff to be able to be anchored in those shared values during moments of conflict. They will arise. Folks experiencing homelessness and animal shelter and people and pets, there's so much complexity to it. Right or wrong is out the door. You know, it really requires us to really show up with our full moral compass and navigate that alongside each other to see what is best in any given moment. And again, like what we've learned, it works. It keeps more pets with their people. There's a reason why people lean onto us or ask for our HOAP program, because they've got that trust and they've got that belief that we're going to look out for them and have the same collective goal. Timing. So bringing it back a little bit to our homeless outreach and assistance program, by practicing this work, we're reducing preventable intakes of medical cases by offering that owned animal care. So rather than an animal coming in on an emergency setting for a hematoma, we get to see them before it's a hematoma and get them seen for like an hour-long appointment, get them in and out. They don't have to ever use a shelter space or a kennel space, and it's just far better for everybody involved. For the pets that inevitably do come to shelter, our staff has insight on vaccine history, saving animal care techs time upon intake. We have different caretaker contexts to help with RTO, return to owner. We have insight on their behavior and who they're friends with and who they can be kenneled with. And for it's increasing return to owner rates, and in the case that folks cannot be returned to their owners, it also increases their adoption success since we have all that additional intel and the animals are often already spayed and neutered and up to date on their vaccines. It's not creating a backlog in our system. Our donor and volunteer engagement has increased as well. A lot of community members see this happening and they want to do something to help. And so our program is kind of giving them the means to step in and give back to what they're witnessing by driving through our streets. It's reducing the shelter stigma and fostering more of a perspective, again, as the community seeing us as a resource. It's increased our call reliability and our officer safety. Officers are more familiar with the community and vice versa, and they have more trust in providing information for maybe calls completely unrelated to welfare. And then staff retention and morale when engaging with HOAP. This work is extremely hard. It's hard work, it's heart work, as I always say, and being able to offer compassionate care that really works to meet people where they're at and to be able to build that bond with someone and have a successful outcome has been huge for navigating feelings of burnout and compassion fatigue. We're really proud to say that our starting team is still our HOAP team today. We have had the same core folks for the last 3 years, and we do not take that lightly. And just how meaningful it could be to work for an organization that gets to say, yes, we can help. There's so much power in that when you're overwhelmed on a consistent basis. So some more takeaways. I think I'm still good on time. Owners are co-partners. Leaning into trauma-informed care allows them to step into that role. Some owners have helped coordinate spay neuter for like 20 plus dogs at an encampment, and then later come and volunteer for HOAP, and maybe in the future they'll work for us. We've also seen a substantial increase in willingness to spay neuter over the years. We're seeing like an exponential increase for folks that were like absolutely against it. Give it a year or two, and they're coming around, broadcasting it to everybody else, telling them to seek services with us. At this stage, nearly all the adult dogs are microchipped or have been seen by HOAP or another vet partner in their lifetime, which is really awesome to see. It allows us to focus a little bit more on puppies. And then staff insight, when doing this work, homelessness is a political, emotional thing that we are all experiencing, whether it's in the shelter setting or driving through our streets on our way home. And it can be hard to witness. And there's a lot of political decisions being made that feel largely outside of our control. So I think where HOAP comes in strong is it also is a wake-up call for our team to ask ourselves, what is in our circle of control? What is in our circle of influence? How can we practice harm reduction in a system that feels so much far beyond us? And it allows us to feel empowered despite the dire circumstances of our political world right now. And last but not least, care is in community. It really takes a whole community to do this work. All of our donors, all of the departments coming together to be in partnership with our neighbors experiencing homelessness and work alongside them to support their pets' care in a way that also minimizes the impact on our shelter. So some resources out there. This is just a gathering. I'm sure that our presenters, they got a background in this as well, so I'm sure that they could offer more insight as well. Mental health first training from National Council for Mental Wellbeing, trauma-informed care and culturally safe training with Vancouver Humane Society. Some of the animal-related trauma-informed cares are actually about like trauma in animals, but it's still largely applicable to humans. It's the same aspect of creating safety, you know, empowerment, peer connection, all that good stuff. And then there's a few more on there. I will highlight My Dog is My Home. It's a yearly virtual conference. It's a great organization working to keep people with their pets as they navigate housing support. We've presented at it a couple times, but they often also have some training opportunities embedded within their conference for trauma-informed care as it relates to animal care. And last but not least, come on a HOAP ride along. If you have some folks in California that you need to visit or whatever it might be, we'd be happy to offer some introductory ideas into how you can incorporate this into your work. And we would definitely love to have you in the field. It's really a good time to get a real true look at what it is we do. All right, and with that said, questions, thoughts, and feelings, I'm all yours for questions. Thank you for the time.
Jenna, that was amazing.
Thank you.
I'm not just saying that. That was really, really, really awesome. And I really love the work that you're doing. We did have a couple questions. I think we could do maybe just like one or two, and then we'll put the rest in the Maddie's forum chat.
Okay.
I really like this question because I'm sure it can be kind of difficult. How do you train everyone in your organization and maintain alignment to this trauma-informed approach?
You know what? I'm going to be totally honest with you. I think that that's something that I'm like working on right now. I came in with former training, and I think that I've been kind of like, that has been one of my strengths that I've contributed to our small team. And we're starting to embed it more into our homeless outreach team. So our vet techs and our animal control officers that work closely with us. But we're in conversations with our supervisory field services staff to embed those trainings on a larger scale. And it's just figuring out that time to do so, whether we hire outside people or we try to internally offer some introductory courses. So I don't have an answer for that one just yet, other than it's a work in progress even for us to this day. But I think just staying committed to like each interaction matters. And so every time we do make progress, like it might not feel like it, but it is. And culture shift will take a long time, but it's real. It's like drought, you know, you don't see it coming until it's there.
Yeah, good analogy. We have another question. How do you navigate the intersection between your department and other city departments, particularly those doing encampment sweeps? How do you differentiate your programming while policies may be going in a counter direction in other areas of the government?
Wonderful question. I think in these, so frankly, their dissemination of information within city entities isn't always spectacular, right? They're not always providing us with all the details of when things are happening or where things are happening. And so I think even just getting to that table of when they're thinking about doing sweeps or navigating sweeps, even getting offered a seat at that table is actually really challenging. I think a lot of folks don't often see animal care as a partner or component of sweeps, even though we are directly impacted every time. So I think that we're trying to get more involved, and we've recently got leadership that sits in on some meetings. So that's been helpful. But frankly, what I've tried to do in the last 3 years is practice that circle of control and practice that circle of influence. I cannot stop the sweep from happening, but what I can do is I can go out there, I can tell the owner, I can get microchips up to date, I can get vaccines ready to go so the intake is much lighter on our animal care team. I can inform owners that something's coming and give them exactly the rundown on what to do if they get separated for their pet, how soon they have to come back, how they can come back, providing animal IDs. So I can provide all this preventative care work, right, to minimize the harm that it's going to cause on that animal-human bond that I am particularly in charge of trying to protect. And so I think that's the most important thing to do is perhaps step back and like we need to be politically engaged and we're showing up to the Capitol during Advocacy Day and trying to voice our opinion, and there's space for that. But at the same time, we need to focus on our circle of control and our circle of influence and really understand what that is and find empowerment in the harm reduction that can come from narrowing in on that.
I love that. Jenna, it's a really good reminder to remember your circle of influence because it can get really overwhelming with all of the things happening at all of the times. So that is a really good reminder. Thank you. We have time for one more question, and then the rest will go in, like we said, into the Maddie's forum. You mentioned a pregnant dog and caring for the puppies before spaying them off. How do you help with the newborns and the rehome before the spaying time can happen?
Yeah, so sometimes folks don't necessarily want assistance for rehoming, and if that's the case, we support their rehoming efforts. We always try to encourage spay neuter before they get rehomed, but sometimes that's just not feasible. But again, our mode of action right there is building trust with the owner to support the long-term health of their primary pet. So when the puppies get of age, anywhere between the 4 to 8 week mark, we'll start going in and offering vaccines, and that's where our field-based component comes in. It wasn't mentioned in this presentation, but we actually have a mobile vet vehicle as well that we can take out in the field and even offer like sedated vet care. But nonetheless, in regards to this question, we'll go out and we'll start offering vaccines, and we'll visit the location every 2 to 4 weeks or set up appointments to make sure that those puppies are up to date on vaccines prior to being rehomed. And then we'll take them in at the 8 week mark, which is when we're allowed to adopt out. So we'll encourage and support the owner trying to take care of their pet up until that 8 week mark, until they're ready to be adopted out. So by the time they get to our shelter, they're already vaccinated, they got their spay neuter appointment, and they can be adopted out that much faster. And if the owner cannot hold on to the pet, we also have a partnership with the UC Davis vet students nearby that can sometimes foster these litters until they do become of age for adoption. And in other circumstances where they get rehomed, we help them out to the extent that we can. And when we see them with new owners, we'll continue to help them out. But once the pups are of 8 weeks, that's when we're clear to offer spay neuter for the mom. And so we basically just keep visiting those owners every 2 to 4 weeks until we can offer spay for mom.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Jenna, like I said, that presentation was phenomenal. I'm going to make a trip to Sacramento just to come visit you and do a ride along. And I mean that. Like I said, the questions that we didn't get to, they'll be in the pet forum, and Jenna, you can answer them in there.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you so much, Jenna. I'm so excited. I know that was a lot in a short amount of time, but I definitely learned quite a bit, and we'll continue the conversation on Maddie's Pet Forum. I know you probably have even more to share. So everyone, please join us there to answer any of these questions. And thank you, Janelle, for joining me again as co-host. I'm really excited to be back again with you next week. We have a panel discussion looking at what the next generation of community clinics look like. So continuing this conversation around community and expanding our definitions of community. It's a really beautiful thing. And speaking of community, I did see in the chat that we have someone here all the way from Ecuador. So very cool that we are an international community here on our community conversations. And for anyone who's interested in potentially hosting with me, or if you have speakers or topics that you would like to hear from, please let me know on Maddie's Pet Forum as well. We'll drop that link in the chat. But so happy to be in community with you all and looking forward to continuing this conversation.